Hey, Dr. Mike here. Are you reading food labels but still confused about what's the best option? Stay tuned to learn what to look for with our guest, Dr. Richard Black.
You're listening to Live Foreverish, a show dedicated to helping you live just a little longer. Here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Crystal Gossard.
All right, welcome to Live Foreverish, Dr. Crystal. It is confusing. Food labels are confusing.
Even as a nutritionist, Dr. Mike.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they get the best of me.
Yeah, and what's even more confusing is this, like the whole different types of processed foods now, and you got minimally processed, you got and it's not as organized as people think.
I agree. And sometimes you think when you look at the classification systems, which we'll talk about a little bit because, our guest has a different way of looking at it.
Mhm.
And remember, we had the show where we talked about the NOVA classification system. So we do have a full show that specifically breaks down the different different types of foods and some problems with ultra processed foods. But I think it's more for practitioners, nutrition professionals to help to guide eating for an individual. I don't think it's really practical for the everyday shopper.
Yeah,
that's the problem sometimes.
The everyday shopper looks at calories. How much am I eating? How much am I getting?
They'll look at protein.
Maybe protein and sugar, but
And of course, if you follow me, then fiber. If you're listening to what I tell you to do.
We have an expert, Dr. Richard Black. He's a PhD. He has over 30 years experience in the packaged food industry. He is now the chief science officer at WiseCode. It's a food database company, an adjunct professor at Tufts University School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Dr. Black, welcome to Live Foreverish.
Thank you very much for having me here. I really appreciate it.
So we had a nice conversation before. What was it last week with Dr. Black?
We did.
And I just don't know anything anymore. That's kind of how I feel, and I'm a medical expert.
So was it a nice conversation if you walked away with nothing?
It was. No. That's why. No, I walked away with a whole bunch of new information that then highlighted a lot of gaps in my previous knowledge.
Very true. Yes. And I just do want to share, I met Dr. Richard at a conference this year. He gave a talk. And after the talk, I was that person that runs up to the speaker.
Yeah, I've seen you do that.
Can we talk? Can I have your card? But he gave such a great talk, and this was a topic I knew we needed to bring to our audience. So we're excited to have you on.
Let's start by discussing the challenges consumers face with making healthy choices in the place where they make the choices the most, in the grocery store. What are we facing? Because it's getting tough.
It's getting very tough. And I know we're going to be talking about ultra processed foods as we go through this. The challenge is just how do you make a decision in the moment? And especially as it's focused around ultra processed foods these days, it's incredibly confusing. You mentioned that you had a previous podcast on the NOVA system. So a gentleman from Brazil, Dr. Carlos Monteiro, developed that system. I think it was first published about 2010. The problem is it classifies about 70% of the food supply as being ultra processed. We have which is like, how can that possibly help me? It just, oh my gosh, everything is ultra processed. And there's a graphic that we have that just sort of lays out the 4 different categories. And for those of you that aren't able to see it, most people focus on category 4, which is the ultra processed. I'll get there in a minute.
There it is. Yeah.
Yep. The first category is unprocessed or minimally processed food. Think dried or fresh frozen vegetables, fresh frozen meat, that sort of thing. The second group are called culinary ingredients. And here you would have cooking oils, butters, fats, lard, spices, things that you would add to foods in the cooking process. And then the third group is when you combine the first two. So you combine flour, let's say, with oils and yeast or butter, eggs, whatever it is, and you make something else. So fresh bread would fall in there. They also put cheese in there and canned products. But that leaves everything else in this other bucket of ultra processed foods, and it's super confusing. I don't know if I've mentioned before, there was a study done. It's kind of funny in retrospect, in 2022, and these people pulled together a bunch of nutrition experts, and they gave them about 120 foods that were processed foods of some level, and they asked people, okay, these experts, put this food into group 1 or group 2 or group 3 or group 4. So 40 or 50 experts, they only agreed on 3 foods.
Yeah, it's
unbelievable.
That right there tells you something's not right.
Something's not right. How can you use that?
Yeah.
How can you possibly use that?
And that's why it's so confusing. And that's why we're here talking about this, because we need to clear this up for people.
Well, I think, and that when we start clearing it up, I think a good place to start is, why are processed foods or even ultra processed foods considered bad? Like, what is that about? Yeah. Because that's what people are being told. Avoid processed foods, or you see the studies, processed foods linked with XYZ.
And then you hear ultra processed, you're like, you eat it right away and you die.
Yeah.
Right.
So what is that about? So can you just explain that piece? Why are they thought to be harmful?
So that's a great question. There was a study published in the British Medical Journal, I think last year sometime, and it looked at all the studies that had been published to that point on ultra processed foods. And it was trying to determine, do people who eat more processed foods show an increased risk for cancers or heart disease or high cholesterol or high blood pressure or obesity, type 2 diabetes, whatever. And it's really interesting because pretty much across all of the different diseases that they looked at, chronic diseases, there's a tiny increase in risk. Now, if ultra processed foods weren't doing anything at all, you would expect to see sort of a random pattern. Some things might appear to reduce the risk, some things might appear to increase the risk, but net, no effect. But they all showed what appeared to be like a slight increase. When I say slight, I mean really, really slight. Mm-hmm. And yet it was significant. And so people are going, there's something going on here. But I think because the definition currently of ultra processed is so darn broad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It captures too many good things as well as the ones we should avoid.
You have some examples of this, right? I think we're going to show, and I think that helped me seeing the examples you had. So let's go through those.
Sure. Before we put that up, just one quick comment. What we did at Wise Code was to say, look, we don't think you should bucket all these things together. We think the more processed ingredients that you have in a food, and the more heavily processed those ingredients are, the more processed your food is. So if you had a food that had just a bunch of dried vegetable powders in them, those are not things you would ever have at home. They would all be classified as ultra processed, but dried vegetable powders, there's nothing wrong with that. Flour, nothing wrong with that. But if you have a highly processed food colors, dyes, pigments, those are fairly highly processed ingredients. So we have a couple different yogurts as an example to really illustrate the point. And so the first example is a probiotic whole milk yogurt. And this yogurt is classified as ultra processed food. What does it have in it? It has 2 cultures, which is typical for yogurt. It has non-fat milk, whole milk as well. There's a bit of pectin, which is just a fruit fiber, and then tapioca starch. And it's the tapioca starch, that one ingredient that's used as a thickener, that kicks this thing over into ultra processed. Now I have another example of another yogurt, if you can toss that one up on the screen for me. And this one here is it's Yo Crunch yogurt. It has M&Ms mixed in with it, M&M candies. And under the current Nova system, those 2 are in the same bucket. which
Yeah.
just doesn't make
It
sense.
doesn't
to me.
make sense.
You look
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
ingredients in this
Yeah.
thing. Oh my gosh. There are these pigments, aluminum lake blue 1, blue aluminum lake blue 2, aluminum lake.
Yeah, it's huge. I just wanted,
Oh my
just for
gosh.
those that are listening to this and not watching, basically we just had 2 yogurts, one with just one with ultra processed ingredient, another one with a whole bunch of stuff that are ultra processed, yet they're classified the exact same way.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So when
something's
we
wrong.
look at these, what we try to do is give people the guidance that they need to say, look, that first yogurt you saw, we would say is minimally processed. I mean, come on, folks. It's got tapioca starch in it. And this other one, we would actually call super ultra processed, because when you look at the ingredient list, it's very long. There are all kinds of pigments, like you'd use in paint, of course. They're food safe, absolutely, but pigments and then colors. There's potassium sorbate in there. There's added sugars, soy lecithin, sodium citrates.
Yeah, it's
the list goes on.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing here explains some of the other research that we have seen, where we now have some nutrition professionals that have been able to create a healthy diet with these processed or ultra processed foods, and it's shocking the world. Like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
You know, what are you doing? And I think it's really just shedding more light to what you're showing us.
Exactly. So this was Julie Haas, Dr. Julie Haas and colleagues who developed menu plans that were ultra processed foods specific. But she was able to choose within that broad ultra processed bucket foods that were less and less processed. And so you get an overall healthy diet. So what we've been doing at Wise Code is to say, look, there's this huge thing that everybody up till now has been calling ultra processed. We actually bucket it out into 5. And we say minimal, light, moderate, ultra, and super ultra. And those ultra, super ultra, the really highly processed ones. And there's an app we have. You can download it in the iPhone app. I don't know what the store is called, but also on Google.
Sounds like me.
Yeah, I don't know. There you go. And all you need to do is you can scan a barcode, and you will see how we look at this.
Okay,
and
that's what I was going to ask, because remember, we started this by going to the grocery store, which is where most people make these kind of decisions, right? They're not prepping near as much as people think. They're just going to the store in the moment, trying to make a decision. Tell us a little bit more. So if I have your app, I can look at, just pick that yogurt I want.
Yeah.
Scan the barcode.
Yes.
And it gives me your categorization. Like,
exactly. Now,
okay.
You think of it this way, though. If there's this broad categorization of ultra processed food, we allow you to look inside that bucket of ultra processed and really get a gauge within that bucket. These are really minimally processed, or lightly processed, or moderately processed, and the app will tell you that. Now, the other interesting thing, and we did not talk about this before, but Dr. Crystal, when you were saying, or maybe Dr. Mike, you were saying about protein density or sugar density, Dr. Crystal, you said fiber density. Those are all measures that we also have, and you can personalize the app. And you can say, I want to see the sugar density, and it'll show you grams of sugar per serving if that's what you want, or it'll show you percentage of energy from added sugar if that's what you want. I want to see the protein density. Then it'll show you grams of protein per 100 calories. I want to see the fiber density. It'll show you the fiber density per 100 calories or per serve, whatever you'd like. And so those are options that you can choose. Now, having said that, someone's going, how do I keep track of all this stuff? Oh my gosh, that's just too many things, right? Well, if you don't want to worry about those things, don't. You don't have to choose those things.
Right.
But they are there for anybody that wants them as well.
Yeah. What do you, Dr. Blake, what do you say to the person who has a bunch of kids and budget's tight? There's not a lot of money to go around. I want to make sure that we're not, we don't want to make people feel bad if maybe they have to go to some of those cheaper choices. But it sounds like your app can maybe help them still stay on the inexpensive side and
Yes.
and avoid some of the true super ultra and ultra type foods, right? Would that be helpful for them?
Yeah, I absolutely would. And yes, that's the intent. We're not trying to tell people what to choose. We're just trying to give them information. Now, I will say, if you have the yogurt, the M&Ms, the yogurt once a month, you know what? I hope you enjoy it. Fine.
Yeah.
But these are
I
foods you
agree.
probably should not eat all the time. Now, what our app will help you to do is do a quick comparison. Scan this one, scan that one. And we
that's
found
nice.
the expensive one is not always better in terms of nutrition quality or processing.
There
It's
you
not.
go.
Well, and I think you brought up a point that I was thinking when you and Dr. Mike were having your conversation. You were kind of elaborating on being able to look at sugar density and protein density, because just because it's minimally processed, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily make it healthy. It doesn't mean that it's
True.
full of sugar. It could be full of pure cane sugar. It could be full of honey, and it can still be a dessert that you would need to, probably consume in moderation. So I do think
Yes.
it's nice that you're able to not just look at the processing, that's one piece, but also look at the nutritional value presented
absolutely.
in that food.
Yeah. And I think that in my own view, consumers, just the average person, is not a nutrition scientist. And they just need a quick and easy way to say, hey, this is what's important to me. This 2 things, 3 things are important to me. I don't want to eat super highly processed foods. I want to keep my added sugar down, and I want to keep the protein up. I'm just making that up. And you can say, okay, and the app will just do those 3 filters for you. You can, and it'll show you this food's got more protein than that food, or this food's got less sugar than that food. And it helps you make those decisions. But to your point as well, just because it's less processed absolutely does not mean it's healthier. Because I can show you minimally processed foods that are far less healthy than something that is, I don't know, moderately or even ultra sometimes in terms of the processing level. So it is a combination of things. That said, if you were going to pick one rule to go by, I would argue that, you know what, if you used our app on processing, that's probably going to guide you in the right direction. Because on average, less processed is less processed. They tend to be healthier foods on average. You're always going to find exceptions.
Right.
Yeah.
This has been great information. I really like this topic.
I do too. I do have a question, because there are other tools available. So can you tell me what makes your app different? Because I was at a birthday party like maybe 6 months ago, and this conversation came up, and one of my neighbors was so proud and was showing off, this app that he had. And so I'm curious to hear how this one is different. What's unique?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One is that we can look at each one of the ingredients in the food and identify those ingredients. A great example, one ingredient that's common and not common, I mean, you see it pop up, is the ingredient SLAT, S-L-A-T. And you think, what on earth is that as an ingredient? It's actually salt misspelled.
Oh, I was just like, I've never heard of that.
Salt misspelled. But we can identify that.
There was going to be a reveal of a new ingredient.
Just
spelled wrong.
That's one example of many. And we're able to see those differences and understand what they are. But we also are able to look at the individual ingredients and map them onto specific risk and so on and so forth. Other apps, if they're going to use a process level, they're going to use the NOVA classification.
Yeah, they're going back to that, the one that has problems.
Yeah, exactly. Then the other thing they do, they'll layer on a nutrition profiling system. There's one in Europe called Nutri-Score, or there's one in Australia, New Zealand called Health Stars. There's one at Tufts University called Food Compass. There's a bunch of those that nutrition profiling,
I'm familiar with that one.
And they might just put those together, and it's fixed. There's one very popular app, I think. It's like 40% processing and 60% Nutri-Score. You can't adjust that. You can't say, well, processing is more important to me. Tough.
Okay.
Oh, no, nutrition is more important to me. Tough. Those things are set. Whereas with our approach to it, it's up to you to say what's most important, and you can choose to highlight those things and make it your own. And that's that personalization piece that we really strive for.
Fantastic. Dr. Blake, this is, I think, really eye-opening to a lot of people. How can they find the listening audience find the app?
You can find the app at the App Store and the Google, whatever the Google, I beg your pardon, I don't know what the Google one is. I post a lot about our data and insights that we have from our data on LinkedIn. And so you can certainly find me on LinkedIn with Richard Black, Wise Code. It'll come up. And if you want to follow, you can follow, of course, without any difficulty. If you want to connect with me, just mention this particular podcast so that I remember where it's coming from. And we just post interesting stuff about the data that we see. One of the more interesting ones, the most common food color we saw in a bunch of store brand foods was the combination of blue and red as a color.
The combo.
It's purple. That makes purple. Yeah, which is great. Right? That's great. And you go, oh my gosh, that's the craziest thing ever. Right. But
the purple is probably things that they want to say it's berry or has blueberry in it.
Absolutely.
And then they use the blue red combo.
Yep. But that's a combo that would never have been tested in a safety thing because there's just too many combinations. So that's we can flag those combos. And those are things I've posted about in the past and continue to do so going forward. So I have fun with those. They're short things, 500 words or less, something like that.
Dr. Black, I apologize to you. I called you Dr. Blake, but it's Crystal's fault. Dr. Crystal's fault because her husband is named Blake.
No, so I actually didn't hear you say Blake. I heard you say Black.
I'm pretty sure I did.
Fair enough.
It's you can blame it on her.
I'll blame it on her husband because you don't want to blame it on Dr. Crystal.
There we are.
Yeah.
Again, fantastic information. Real quick, do you have a website that if someone wants just to learn about Wise Code in general, not maybe download yet, they're not ready?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, wisecode.ai, like for artificial intelligence, wisecode.ai. We use a lot of AI in our approach to this to uncover the patterns and to see these things and for engagement with the information as well. wisecode.ai.
Hey, thanks for coming on the show today.
This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it, folks. Thanks, Dr. Mike. Thanks, Dr. Crystal.
Yes.
And don't forget, you go to liveforeverish.com where you can download, like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. We love comments and we love reviews, all at liveforeverish.com. Tons and tons of episodes for you to check out. And then don't forget, our sponsor, Life Extension, wants to say thank you and offer you a discount code podcast. You can redeem 10% off your entire order. Is
10% off $50 or more
plus free shipping? That's at lifeextension.com. Use the word podcast. I'm Dr. Mike. That's
Dr. Crystal.
Thanks for listening.